Here we go. Please feel free to tell me in the chat where you are in the world and where you or what you write, fiction, nonfiction, what genre are you in? I love learning about who's on the call, and it can really help me kind of customize as we go along. Okay, so this is the Foundations of Book Marketing webinar, otherwise known as the How the Hell Do I Sell This Book or Books webinar. Because this is an area that is very much mystified, confusing, overwhelming for writers, and I really want to help relieve that. I see a lot of familiar names and some new names as well. So I want to introduce myself briefly. I am Sue Campbell. I am a book marketing and mindset coach, very, very heavy on the mindset, which I'm sure you will see for yourself by the end of the webinar. I work with award-winning authors, best-selling authors, authors who are just starting out, authors who have a few books under their belt, really the gamut. I help fiction and nonfiction, traditionally published and independently published. I just want to help authors grow their platform and sell more books. And anybody who's got a book out who wants to have an impact needs to be able to do that. So before we start, this is going to be a webinar where I talk kind of fast, and I'm going to give you a lot of information. There will be a replay, but I still recommend grabbing a notebook and a pen or whatever note-taking device is your preference, and take some notes for yourself. And thank you for all the birthday wishes in the chat. I see those. Also, please tell me in the chat, what is your biggest marketing challenge right now? Because again, this will help me tweak a little bit as we go along and gear up my brain for the Q&A section as well. So tell me, Christina says, actually doing any marketing at all. Yep, that's very common, Christina. Margaret says, getting started. Ruth says, oh, you're writing about nutrition and mental health. Oh, I love that topic. That's so important. Susan says, where to start? Stephen Bright says, biggest challenge is getting started. Good. We've got a lot of people who just need the basics, and this is definitely the high level fundamental strategy today. Sherry says, getting email addresses and followers and choosing where to focus social. Great. Eleanor says, overwhelm, feeling like there's not enough time in the day. Yep. Reverend Taylor swearing in says, email list. Tara says, biggest marketing challenge. Follow through, putting something out more than once in a blue moon. Yep. Julie says, how do you start marketing before your book is finished and you have no books published yet? Oh, girl, you can do it. We can talk about that during the Q&A section. Phyllis, this is so common. My biggest marketing challenge is that I just don't want to do it. I want to write. And I'll talk about that today. This is one of the reasons I focus so heavily on mindset, right? Because if you really don't want to do it, and you can't reframe it for yourself to get you a little bit of inspiration, you're not going to do it. All right. Well, you guys are very, very active in telling me what your challenges are. We're gonna keep going for now. And remember, we are gonna have a Q&A period. So there's a Q&A box at the top or in your little Zoom toolbar, wherever it is for you. So if you have a question you specifically want me to answer later, I'm not going to be able to check the chat for questions throughout because it moves very fast. Stick it in the Q&A box and we will get to it at the end. So as you can see, just from the things that I read, a lot of what you all said are things that I hear all the time. I want to write, not market. I don't know where to start. Marketing is confusing and overwhelming, right? These are common things that all writers face. I'm imagining that you showed up at a webinar like this because you want some clarity around what's actually going to give you the best results for your efforts, because you don't want to spend all your time doing this. So you want what you do to actually move the needle. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about why marketing just using a slapdash playbook of tactics from the internet is likely to fail. We are going to talk about a better definition of marketing, which is really crucial from a mindset perspective. We're going to talk about what I think your number one book marketing goal should be for those of you who are going to write more than one book over the course of your career. And most of the time will be spent of me explaining this 4-part book marketing strategy that will actually grow your audience and sell more books. So that's the meat of the time today. I am also, after the presentation and before the Q&A, going to give you a brief opportunity to learn more about how to work with us. My company, Pages and Platforms, we help you craft the best book possible and get it out into the world. And then how you choose to publish it is up to you, right? We're going to help you build the audience and write the best book possible. If you don't want to, have a chance to work with us further and you're just not interested in being pitched today, that's totally fine. Go grab a snack, step outside, get some fresh air, whatever you want to do, and then come on back for the Q&A. So here's what you already know. All of you, no matter how new you are to writing books and being an author, and there are a lot of you who actually have a lot of experience because I recognize some names in the chat. You know that you have to write a great book in order for people to want to buy it. You know that you have to have a great cover and a great book description, right? Your jacket copy has to be really good. And you have to present yourself professionally. Sadly, when you Google book marketing, most of the first results in Google are articles that will tell you all of these things that are ridiculously obvious, right? We already know these things, and yet when we start Googling, it takes a while to wade through and get down to something deeper than these things. And what I want you to know and notice about these things is none of them bring people to your book. It's all about creating the product that is marketable, but it doesn't actually bring people to your marketplace or make them aware of your book. It's all things that revolve around people actually already having found your book. So that's not helpful. So we want to dive in and get beyond those very obvious facts so you can take this idea a little further. So let's talk about this first. Why is marketing your book using that slapdash playbook of tactics from the internet likely to fail? Well, we just looked at one reason, and that a lot of it is very basic. There are other problems with online marketing advice. Oftentimes it is tactics, not strategy. So when you do get beyond the bullets that I just showcased there, people are talking about, oh, everybody needs to be on TikTok, or everybody needs to be on Twitter, or everybody needs to be running Facebook ads, or everyone needs to be running Amazon ads. Those are all tactics. They're not strategy, right? A strategy is a comprehensive, here's how I'm going to bring people to the book and get them all the way through to the sale. It's not one little tool, one little piece of it. So most articles, just from the nature of the internet, are about tactics. And that's understandable. They're also very bite-sized and clickbait. Again, that's understandable given the nature of the internet, right? People are trying to get you to click. People who are online want to read short little articles so that they can move on to the next thing. Another issue, it doesn't necessarily focus on your return on investment. When you Google, you may find articles that talk about like 100 things you can do to market your book in under 10 minutes. Right? Well, if none of those things are actually worth doing, they just give you a sense that you have done something, but you don't know if it's going to actually work or not, then that is not a good return on the investment of your time, even if it only took less than 10 minutes. And it's also a one size fits all sort of mentality very often, right? Like everybody needs to be on TikTok. Everybody needs to be on Twitter. So you need to have an underlying strategy when it comes to book marketing so that you can wade through the noise of tactics and articles like this, because there's a lot of good information out there, but you need to be able to contextualize it, right? I'm not saying there's no good information about book marketing on the internet. Of course there is, but once you have the strategy I'm going to give you today, it will help you contextualize all of that a lot better. So let's talk about number 2 on our agenda, a better definition of book marketing. I wish I didn't even have to call it marketing, because this minute we hear that word, we bring our own worst experiences with marketing to that word. That word has a lot of baggage, right? So tell me, when I just say, hey, I mean, obviously you're curious and you're open enough, or you wouldn't show up to a webinar like this. But on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love the concept of marketing? 10 being you absolutely love it, 1 being, you'd rather go get a root canal. Tell me in the chat. Yeah, Ramon's like 1. Susan says -6. We got a lot of low numbers. I think our highest so far is, I thought a 5 or a 6 in there. Okay, great. Great. So we've got some lukewarm to mediums and a lot of lows. Understandable and very, very normal. And Phyllis says 2, but only because root canals are hell on earth. Okay. You all are so lively. I love it. Okay. So that's why I don't want to call it marketing, because what we're doing as authors is very different than the hard sell tactics that give marketing a bad name, right? I don't want you to be a spam phone caller. I don't want you to be interrupting people or pressuring people. It doesn't work. It feels yucky for everybody involved. That's not what we're doing here. The other reason, I'll get to that I'll say that in a second. So the better definition of marketing that I want to give you today is that I want you to think about this as you're building long-lasting connections with readers, and you're doing it on your own terms, and they are doing it on their own terms. So this is a mutually beneficial relationship that you want to foster and develop over time. So you can sell every new book you come out with and everything on your backlist to a group of people who super value it and want it, right? That's what takes the yuck out of marketing. And we'll talk more about that in the course of the strategy that I'm going to outline for you. The fact is, folks, and I used to kind of be a little bit sheepish about saying it, but I've just started to say it outright. I don't actually care about marketing. I'm not like a marketing nerd who's all in for marketing's sake, right? I don't love everything about it. I don't care about marketing except as an avenue for you as an author to have impact. And this is the crazy mindset piece again, for who you become in the course of doing your marketing. Because when we have to get out there and build relationships with readers and put ourselves out there and, face being ignored, face rejection, that is a huge opportunity for personal development and to expand your comfort zone and build your self-confidence and build your sense of worthiness, right? It requires you to step up in a way that you don't normally have to do in the course of your everyday life if your job does not involve that, right? That is why marketing, in my opinion, is a wonderful thing, because number one, it lets you have impact. And number two, you're going to grow, right? And I am all about growth. I have a growth mindset. I'm a lifelong learner. I never want to stay in my safety zone for very long. Of course, we all need a respite sometimes and we can retreat to our comfort zone, but we have to be pushing those boundaries for ourselves if we want to grow as people. Grow as a writer, yes, Stephen, but I'll just grow as a person. I'm literally just talking about personal development, right? Of who you are and what you're able to do in the world. So that's number 2. Number 3 is, what is your number 1 book marketing goal? And I wanted to call it out because it's so important as a takeaway for this workshop, but I also want to give it to you within the context of the 4-part marketing strategy. But I'm going to quiz you on this at the end of this part of the presentation. I'm going to quiz you on what's our number 1 book marketing goal, but I want to give it to you within this 4-part framework. So let's dive into that. This is where we're going to spend most of the time today. I'm going to walk you through the connection system, which will help you actually build your audience and sell more books. So the first piece of the system is permission. If you don't know what that means yet, it's okay. I'm going to walk through each of these 4 pieces. Content, outreach, and selling. Those are the 4 pieces of the connection system. So let's walk through them one by one, and then I'll give you a few examples also of how the connection system works in action. And it's just the tip of the iceberg for how the connection system can work. It'll give you some ideas. Okay, so the first step in the system, the first piece of it is permission. So permission-based marketing is inherently a non-slimy form of marketing because it relies on your audience or in your potential audience to give you permission to be in contact with them. So they say, yes, I'm going to allow you into my digital space. I'm going to allow you into my physical space. And it lets you get people's attention and drive action that can build that relationship that we talked about. So permission-based marketing will take so much of the yuck out of marketing. Again, we're not interrupting people. We're not high pressuring people. We are literally asking for permission to communicate with folks and tell us more, and they can revoke that permission at absolutely any time. Now, types of permission. Social media is a type of permission. If I follow, Diana on Instagram, I am giving Diana's content permission to show up in my feed. So that is a form of permission. The problem with social media as a form of permission for authors is that it literally does not sell books very well at all. We have a lot of data to back this up. The current exception, which this is already shifting, is TikTok. So TikTok can move some books, right? Book Talk, hashtag Book Talk within the TikTok platform can absolutely sell some books, but we are already probably at the end of that TikTok bubble where it's going to get very pay to play very soon. The problems with social, it's very hard to drive readers to take buying actions. This second bullet is like not even a complete picture of it. Not only is it easy to get buried in someone's feed, the real problem is that you won't show up in someone's feed at all. Even if they are a quote unquote follower, they're following your account, the algorithms restrict, any post that you put out is only going to reach a small fraction of the people who are following you. So we get this overinflated sense of our own importance on social if we have a large audience, because we're like, oh, I've got an audience of, however many thousands of people it is. But the fraction of people you're reaching with any one post, if you're not promoting it through ads, is actually very small. If you don't believe me, all you have to do is don't do it now. Pay attention to the strategy and then go look. But if you go on Twitter and look at Stephen King's account, he has 7 million followers. Then go look at any of the last posts that he put out and how many views it got. It's just a fraction of that 7 million, right? And I use him as an exaggerated example. So he's still getting a lot of views per post, but we're not all Stephen King. We don't have 7 million followers. So shrink that down to the size of your current audience. If you're maybe in the low thousands, which is very common for a lot of authors, you're getting, 34, 78 people liking any one of your posts. So it's very easy to just not show up at all or to get buried in someone's feed. When we're on social media, we're often in scroll mode. We're not necessarily in interact, engage, go click a link to buy a book mode. Some of us are more than others. But again, compared with the other type of social, of permission that I'm going to talk about, social media is just like peanuts, right? Your return on your investment of the time it takes to build an audience is really a pittance. Also, these platforms can change the rules, change the algorithms. They can crash without warning. We don't own them. We don't have any control over them. There were a lot of people 10, 15 years ago who built huge Facebook page followings. And then almost overnight, over a very short period of time, all of a sudden it was pay to play. They couldn't reach these audiences that they had literally built their businesses on because Facebook lured them in and then switched the game to be pay to play. There is a place for paid advertising, but I'm just saying organic social media is not the best use of your time to put all your eggs in that basket to sell more books. Of course, you're going to find exceptions, right? You probably are already thinking of some, and that's okay. I'm giving you the big picture. You can always go and prove me wrong on an individual level if you want to, but I just want to save you some time. Okay, so this brings us to our number one book marketing goal. Social media is a form of permission, but it's not a very effective one. So what is? What is building an email list of subscribers. So these are people who have raised their hand. You've said, hey, do you want to hear more from me by joining my email list of subscribers? Or sometimes it's called a newsletter, by joining my author newsletter. And they have said yes. And now you have a database of email subscribers who are your core audience. So the list of advantages is much bigger than just these couple of bullets, but the big ones are, you don't have to reinvent your audience every time a book comes out, right? You can easily reach people who loved your first book and get their attention. because it's being delivered to their inbox, not being hidden by an algorithm on social media. You don't have to keep hustling for those new readers, and you can easily tell them when the next book is out, when there's a sale on one of your current books, when you're running specials, when you need reviews. You can reach people at any time for any of those reasons. You own the list, and provided you are obeying the relevant laws, it cannot be taken from you. Of course, individual subscribers can unsubscribe. We want them to be able to do that, right? Again, permission-based marketing, we don't want anybody on board who's not actually on board. So you control your list, and then the individuals on that list can opt out if they want to, and we want that for them. You control the message. When you have your own email list of subscribers and you reach out, you don't have to be like, how do I phrase this with all the magical keywords that the algorithm is actually going to show? Or how do I make sure I'm not violating terms of service by mentioning, XYZ, right? Or if you write erotic romance, or if you use swears. You control the message. It's also, your email inbox for most of us is a much quieter, more intimate space where we can ask people to take those actions. So click on a link to sign up for a webinar, click here to leave me a review, click here to buy a book, right? Click here to listen to my latest podcast. Whatever it is, it's much easier to drive action. And again, there's so much data that bears this out for social media engagement rates versus email list engagement rates. Orders of magnitude, emails orders and orders of magnitude higher for your ability to get audience engagement than it is on social. All right, so in order to have an email list, you're going to need some things, right? This is your permission asset, your email list. You need a website, or at the very least a landing page. You need an email service provider. You need sign-up forms. So people can, you're not running this out of your normal Gmail account or your Yahoo account or whatever it is, right? We cannot do that. We have to have an email service provider that's specifically for this purpose. You need to have a sign-up form that your email or a service provider will generate for you. It'll give you some code, and then you can go and add that to your website so people can sign up. I also highly recommend you have a sign-up incentive. So you're incentivizing people to sign up for your email list. I see so many author websites where people say, sign up for my news and updates. I love you all, but nobody wants our news and updates, right? They want something specific that is interesting, informative, entertaining to them. And we can talk about that a little bit. And then you need at least one welcome email that's going to deliver the thing that you promised and warm that person up a little bit. Let them know if they're in the right place. Give them a chance to unsubscribe right off the bat if it isn't what they thought it was. Right? You want that email, at least one welcome email. I recommend usually a sequence. But those are the kinds of things you need to think about when you're setting up your email list. Again, today's an overview. I can't go into the details for each of these, but a lot of you are familiar. And I saw people saying, building my email list. So some of you already have email lists, which is great. So that was step one of the connection system. Piece number one was permission, that email list. That's our number one goal, is to build that list. Once someone's on our email list, we have multiple opportunities to sell them our book. Second piece is content. So content is anything that you're putting out into the world that's going to help people decide if they want to build that relationship with you. Is this a good fit? Do they like your writing? Are they interested in what you have to say? This is really the comfort zone for a lot of writers, right? When we talk about marketing, it's like, yeah, I'll write some blog posts. No problem. That part will be fun, right? We often look forward to that part. So content ideas, blog posts, newsletters, that you can use the same content for your blog posts and your newsletters, by the way. Social media posts are content. If you are doing a small social strategy, that's fine. I just don't want you putting all of your energy into that. I want you growing your email list, but social can be a part of that. If you're on a podcast, the words that are coming out of your mouth are content. You can write blogs for other people's websites or articles. You can give speeches and readings in person. You can write posts for sites like Medium. If you're in the nonfiction space, you can do workbooks or video courses or Q&As or white papers, all kinds of content. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. Content must-haves, right? So just like to have an email list, we have certain things that have to happen. I think for your content, you need to have that welcome email for subscribers, and then you need to have a regular newsletter for subscribers. When we are not regularly feeding that relationship, number one, people can forget what the heck they signed up for, and you show up 3 months after they signed up, you show up in their inbox and they don't know who you are, and you get labeled as spam, or they just delete it, right? So when we are communicating regularly, we're showing respect for having a reciprocal relationship. I have seen authors who, from a very good place, are like, the only time I'm going to build an email list, but the only time I'm ever going to email anybody is when I have a new book coming out, because I don't want to annoy people. The problem with that is that it is very much like your friend who only calls you when he needs you to help him move, right? The message that can send to your audience is, oh, I only hear about this person when they want me to buy their book. And that's not the message we want to communicate. We're building a relationship here. So when it's not just gimme, 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 it's time to buy my book. This third piece of content that you need is content to use with influencers. And I'll explain more about influencers in a second here, but you're going to go out and find audiences that other people have built that have your ideal readers in them. You need content for that. So talking points, guest articles that you can write for other places, whatever you decide to do in terms of content for other people's audiences, that's really key. And that's actually where I want you spending your content creation time if your audience is still small or not where you want it to be. We don't want you spending 8 hours writing a newsletter for the 38 people who are on your list right now. You're going to burn out, right? You're going to be like, I'm doing all this work, creating all this content, and I still only have 38 people on my email list. We want you using that time and energy investment, and I'm just using 8 hours as an example. That time should be spent making things that will get as many eyeballs on it as possible. So you want to spend your content creation time for marketing, spend that wisely and use it when you can get in front of a bigger audience. Okay, so we got permission and content so far. The third step is outreach. When people tell me, hey, I have an email list, I have a sign-up incentive, I have a website, I'm not selling any books, and I'm not growing my email list, I know exactly what's missing, and it's outreach. So this is the magic ingredients. You need to get out into the world and move people from not knowing that you exist to now knowing that you exist. This is the magic ingredient. And if you're growing slower than you would like or not at all, this is what you need to crank up. All right. Super, super critical. So this is where we talk about influencers. So often when people hear that word, either they've never heard it before, or they think an influencer is like this young woman who's like doing makeup tutorials on Instagram, right? I want you to think more broadly than that. And an influencer is anyone who can get other people to buy your book and become your fan. So that's what an influencer is. Someone who, with the ability to influence other people, they have their opinion is trusted and respected by their audience. So some types of influencers, this is not exhaustive. Other authors in your genre are influencers, most definitely. Bloggers, book reviewers, right? People who do book reviews on TikTok or Instagram, or even their own websites. Of course, for publications, those reviewers are definitely influencers. Podcasters, event bookers. So not the figurehead, but the person behind the scenes at a conference, for example, who's doing the booking of speakers. Journalists, librarians, other people who have large email lists or large social followings. If someone else has built, if Stephen King is like, hey, I'll help you out and post on social about your book, you go ahead and let them. But I don't want you investing the time to build that audience size yourself. Just leverage somebody else's audience in that case. And you build your email list, let them build the social following, and then leverage it if you can. So those are some types of influencers. Depending on what you write, you may have a category that's completely different. Maybe it's professors. Maybe it's people who own gas stations. I don't know, right? But think broadly about the kind of work that you do, the kind of books that you write, the audience that you want, and who already has that audience. And there's your influencer. So outreach further breaks down. It sounds like one part of a 4-part system, but it further breaks down into these 7 things. I'm going to just go through them super quickly because I need to have time and I want time for Q&A. And this is a kind of a big unpackable topic. So the first step is mindset. You're not going to do this if you don't have a grasp on your own mindset, because you're for sure going to get ignored and you're for sure going to get rejected. It's just part of the package of doing this kind of work. You need those things in order to get the yeses. So you have to do the self-coaching to be able to withstand being ignored and rejected and not take it personally, right? It doesn't mean you're terrible. It doesn't mean your book is terrible. It doesn't mean that influencer is terrible. We always just give everyone the benefit of the doubt that they're making the best decision for them and they have way more information about what they're doing than I do, right? So like bless and move on. You need to set goals in terms of metrics of how much outreach you're willing to do with the time that you have. Too many times I've talked to authors who are like, well, somebody said to go on podcasts, but I pitched one podcast and I never heard back, so I never tried it again. Right? We have to be willing to sprinkle enough seeds in the garden so if not all of them germinate, right, we've still got something to work with. Third step is to know who your reader is. Who are we aiming to find? We've got to know who the ideal reader is, because otherwise we're just kind of shooting blanks, right, throwing spaghetti at the wall. We want to get a really clear idea of our ideal reader, because in step 4, we're going to do the research to figure out who's already built an audience full of those people. Step 5 is about cultivating relationships with influencers. This is where social media is wonderful, right? It's a very democratizing force. And as you can have the opportunity to create relationships with influencers via social media, right? That's why it's called social media, because we're being social on a one-to-one basis, rather than thinking we can just push out a link and people are going to magically buy the book. Step number 6 is pitching, right? Looking for that win-win. You're pitching that influencer in a way that is advantageous for both of you. And then step 7 is delivering really, really professionally when someone says yes. And again, a lot more to unpack there. The 4th part of the system is offering your book to the right people. This is selling. And again, this is another word where we bring our own worst experiences and a lot of baggage and we don't want to do it. And I totally understand that. But I want to give you a reframe for this and another way of thinking about it. So there's a coach who I follow who calls this clean selling. And this is my definition, not hers, but I like the terminology, right? We don't want to feel icky. We don't want to feel dirty. How do we make this a clean process? So the first thing that I like to think about is that virtuous actions have virtuous results. And I straight up stole this from Buddhism, right? So when we act virtuously in the world, when it comes to our marketing and our selling, that will have good things coming back to us. It may not be the exact thing we were expecting or wanting or aiming for, but that's okay. We're going to go into the world, do our marketing and selling virtuously, and then we're going to get good things back as a result of that. Right? The more goodness that you put out, the more goodness you are going to get back. When it comes to making art, writing books, I want you to remember that doing that is full stop a virtuous act already. Right? You have poured blood, sweat, tears, money, time into the creation of your book, however it's being published, right? So you are adding value to the world with the act of making a book. It may not be valuable to everyone, but you are going to, when you are selling, share your gifts with the people who want to accept it. A lot of the friction or yuckiness around selling comes from a mismatch of the seller to the perceived buyer, right? So if you're writing children's books about dinosaurs, right, picture books, and you go to a party and you meet people, and like, let's say you meet a guy there and he's 37 years old, he has no children, no nieces, no nephews, no children in his life at all. and you're hard selling him your book about dinosaurs, your picture book. That's weird and yucky. We're not doing that. But if you meet someone out in the world who has a kid or a grandkid or is a teacher who is like, their kids in their life are super into dinosaurs, it would be really weird for you to not offer this valuable thing that you created. Does that make sense? All right. So tell me, little brief touch base before we do like a putting it all together. How does that definition of marketing and selling feel to you now as opposed to when you came in? I need to take a sip of water, so I'm going to wait for you to type. Much better, feels good, it feels better, much better. Okay, good. Take some of the scariness out of it. Feels wonderful, unlocks a lot for me. Yep. Okay. Joel, yep. And Joel, I am not blowing smoke. Like marketing done well and virtuously is some of the best self-development fast track out there. Still feels challenging. Yep, for sure. Yep, feels better, but still challenging. It 100% is. I'm not telling you it's going to be super easy. Phil says, it fits with my concept of being an instrument for the story to get out into the world. Yes. Okay, love it. I'm glad that's helpful. Okay, so let's look at how we put this connection system together all at once. So we have permission, content, outreach, and selling, right? Those are the 4 pieces of the connection system. There are a lot of ways that you can mix and match and fill in all of these different pieces, right? Especially when it comes to content and outreach. So let's look at a couple of, we've got 2 examples for you, but really like don't limit yourself into thinking that's the only way. I want you to start brainstorming of how you could put it into action. So example number 1, let's say that you befriend via social media an influencer in your space who has a popular podcast, right? So that is outreach, albeit on a small level, but that influencer now knows who you are because you reached out and developed that relationship. So that's outreach. Then you would pitch that influencer to be on their podcast virtuously, like in a way that is a win-win. It's reciprocally beneficial, right? So that is outreach because that podcast, you being on that podcast is going to reach people you would not otherwise be able to reach. And while you're on that podcast, you're going to be delivering content. Then at the end of the podcast, let listeners know where they can learn more about you, right? So you give them your website. Hopefully you give them directly to a page where they can sign up for your newsletter. You want that call to action. You're going to say, hey, sign up for my newsletter and I'll give you X, right? You want to offer that sign up incentive because nobody wants our newsletter for the sake of our newsletter unless we're already super famous typically. So that's permission. The call to action is for them to come on back and join our audience via our email list, via our newsletter. Then that new subscriber, when they join the list, is going to get the welcome email or maybe a sequence of emails that's going to have that additional relationship building content. So that's more content. And then every newsletter has a blurb about your book and a link to buy it. And that is selling. So Sarah says, I got stopped on number 1. That's why I do not want you to take these examples as gospel and the only way to do it. You don't have to befriend an influencer for this system to work. So watch your brain. This is mindset work. Your brain is scared as hell by the prospect of doing outreach and is going to look for any little thing that says that won't work for us, right? There are so many ways to spin this out. So put your brain to work in the other direction of like, okay, I'm problem solving. How can I get this to work for me? What are some examples? So here's another example, Sarah, that has nothing to do with you befriending anybody who's, an influencer. And again, not all influencers are super duper famous and intimidating anyway. So keep that in mind too. Example number 2, you can just decide to review a book from an author in your genre without anybody having to agree to anything, right? So you could do it on a podcast. You could do it on, social media, in your newsletter, wherever. You can just decide that you're going to do a book review. So that would be content, right? The contents of that book review is content. When you publish that, you can tag the author on social media when you promote the post. 9 times out of 10, there are exceptions, but that author is going to be like, cool, free publicity. Someone liked my book. I'm going to share this on social with my audience, right? So that is then outreach. Like when you tag the author, that's just content. That your social post itself is content, but because you're tagging the author, that becomes outreach, because when that author reshares to their audience, you are now getting exposed to people who you wouldn't be otherwise be able to reach. And then remember, this is on your imaginary podcast. So then your podcast or your book review, wherever it is, ends with a call to action to join your email list and get that sign up bonus. So that's permission. We're always sending people back to the email list. And then your newsletters always have a blurb about the book and links to buy. That's not all it has, right? The newsletter is not just a, hey, go buy my thing every single time you send it out, but that should always be a part of it. There should always be some little call to action in there. And Izzy says, don't forget to never tag an author in anything less than a rave review. Yes, this strategy will not work, right? If you're trolling somebody, if you're giving them a bad review, right? I don't recommend that you are, karmically speaking, publishing a bunch of bad reviews about other people. If you really don't like a book, that's cool. It's for somebody else. It's not for you. Okay. So let's recap. Here's what we talked about today. We talked about the problems with grabbing random articles off the internet and using them to deploy a book marketing strategy. They're tactics. They're not a strategy. I've just given you a strategy that's incredibly flexible. So now you can look at a tactic and be like, okay, is this permission? Is it outreach? Is it content? Or is it selling? Where are my gaps? So if there's a tactic that is all about content, but you've already got plenty of content, you don't need to start doing that tactic. If there's a tactic about outreach and you're like, oh, that might work for me, I'm weak in outreach, I need to do more of it, then you can be like, yeah, maybe I should try that tactic. Also really important to consider your ideal reader. We talked about a better definition of marketing. This is about creating long-term relationships and connections with readers. We're some of the coolest people in the world, right? You probably think that people who read in your genre are people you would like to hang out with. And then number 3, we talked about, here's where the quiz comes in. What's your number 1 book marketing goal? Waiting to hear in the chat. Yes, build that reader list, email list. Yes, Tara and Margaret, ding, ding, ding. And then we spent most of the time talking about that 4-part book marketing strategy that will grow your audience. So this is the part where if you do not want the chance to work with me and my team more closely, you are more than welcome to go get up, grab a cup of water. We're going to come back and answer questions. We might even be able to go a few minutes over. We'll see how many questions we have, but I also have to check my calendar super quick. But I would be remiss if I did not tell you that it is incredibly essential as an author to keep your finger on the pulse of things that are happening in the world, constantly be working to improve your craft. And almost the most important is to surround yourself with people who understand what you're trying to do and will help inspire and motivate you to keep going, right? If you are alone off in your little writing cave, it is very hard to wrap your head around marketing and to get the impetus to do it on your own for most people. I'm guessing that 99% of the people on this call, you know that writing is actually your calling. Maybe you ran from it for years and years, like I did for a long time before I finally got my mind right. So writing is your calling, and you want those craft resources and you want the support to reach your writing goals in a way that is sensible, right? And efficient. So my colleagues and I have 2 developmental editors who are brilliant, who I work with very closely. We've developed the Happily Ever Author Club. So this is a club that you can join on a monthly basis. You can cancel anytime, but it is the most magical mix of writing, marketing, mindset support to create your ultimate author life. We have been around since 2020. And we have an astonishingly cool community of writers. A lot of them are actually on this call right now. I noticed some names of my people out there. I want you to know that it is time to move your creative projects forward. A lot of people moved their creative projects forward while we were all in lockdown. It was very exciting to see that silver lining of the pandemic, where a lot of people were able to move forward. What I have noticed is that a lot of people, sort of life has swallowed them up again, and their creativity has taken a backseat, and their marketing has taken a backseat. And that just makes me so sad and so worried, right? We need voices out there that are diverse. We need people to have the time and the space and the tools that they need to clear all the obstacles that come up to the writer's life. So this is a very high touch community that is for people who are committed authors. And whatever pace you're going doesn't matter. However big you want your ultimate success to be, it doesn't matter. You're just committed to showing up because you know this is your calling. There's a couple of testimonials. There's more on the web page that I'm going to give you for more information. I'm going to pop that in the chat right now just so you can check that out, because I want to make sure we have time for Q&A. So lots of testimonials on the website. What it includes. So first of all, it's like the Netflix of content, right? On-demand content and live calls for authors. So there's a ton of craft resources, a ton of marketing resources that we've put together over the past 4 years. So the Story Path course is our flagship course that's absolutely amazing and can help you self-edit your novel as far as you possibly can, and make a really, really solid story that for sure works. We have weekly group calls live with Anne and Rochelle. The power of having an expert at your fingertips, so whenever you hit an obstacle, you have someone to help you get through that, is just, it's priceless. You have weekly group calls with me. They're actually usually during this exact time slot. We had a guest speaker today, so we had to move our regular call time. So Friday calls with me happen at noon Pacific time. We have group work sessions twice a week, where if you are the kind of person who benefits from body doubling and being on a Zoom call where everybody's heads down and working on their writing or their marketing, we have those twice a week. We have a ridiculously extensive training library of book marketing training, as well as craft advice. And we have a beautiful community, a community forum on Circle. So if you hate Facebook groups, don't worry, you don't have to go to a Facebook group, where 24/7 people are on there, and they're supportive and wonderful and inspiring. And it is not like a cutthroat, competitive, I'm better than you place at all. Like the culture of our community has nothing to do with any of that. We're all about raising each other up. So the club can help you get that story unstuck and finally written. It can banish your marketing blocks that we talked about, mindset-wise, that a lot of us have, and build an audience that can't wait to buy your next book. You can get better results with the time and money that you've invested when you have a community where we can give you the resources and the advice to help you clear those roadblocks so that you can actually achieve your writing and your marketing goals. And again, I cannot emphasize enough what a beautiful thing it is to have a community of writers who get it, because writing is a weird vocation, and a lot of people in your life may not get it, and they may even want to be supportive, but they don't know how to be supportive for this kind of thing. So we've got a lot of stuff that's just downloadable immediately when you come into the club. So even if you only came in for a month, there's tons of stuff that you could download and keep forever. One of those things is a bonus called the Pages and Platforms Book Marketing Workbook. It's available. It's an EPUB, so an ebook that you can download and keep. We've got a ton of paid workshops where normally if you're not in the club, you would have to pay to take those workshops. I talked about outreach today and unpacking that. This is a 2-day workshop that I teach on how to find and pitch influencers. Anne and Rochelle have put together the guide to story and story types, which is absolutely brilliant. You can download right away. If you sign up to be an annual member, you can actually get a 1-hour bonus call with either Anne, Rochelle, or me. So one-to-one bonus call for people who sign up for the annual membership. And then, of course, we have those weekly live calls, both on the editing side, on the craft side, and on the marketing side. So if you do want to join us, you probably want to know what the investment is. We created this because our one-to-one prices, we know are out of reach for a lot of people, right? So we wanted to democratize this information and make sure that it was available. So if you were hiring us one-to-one, it's going to run anywhere from $500 to $6,000 just to get on calls for coaching packages. The StoryPath course itself retails for almost $1,000. It is monstrous in a good way, right? And we can point you to where you need to be in it, but it's $1,000 course. Hiring Anna or Rochelle to do like a diagnostic of your manuscript runs up to $3,000. Hiring me to create a customized launch plan for you, but you're executing it, I'm just giving you the absolutely custom best strategic launch plan, is about $9,000. And then I do launches for nonfiction authors, right, who've gotten a big advance and they want to reinvest it into marketing. And those launches run $30,000 or more. We love working with fiction authors and with people who are mid-list and want to grow. So we created the club so that we could get this information more broadly available. So I don't like estimating this kind of thing, but people always want it. So if I had to estimate the total value of the program, it would for sure be $3,000 or more. So the monthly membership ongoing is $179 a month. You can cancel anytime. And because it is my birthday, and it really is, I'm turning 48, you can get $48 off of your first month when you use the code BDAY48, but that's today only because it's my birthday. So you can come in and try the club for $131. And I mean, I don't know why anybody wouldn't unless they do not have any time the next 30 days to be able to go in. So if you're going to travel or if you're super busy at work, don't do it. But otherwise, I can't think of a reason you wouldn't come in there, binge everything you possibly can for $131, and then decide if you want to stay longer or not. So as soon as you join, you get immediate access to the club and the community and all of the resources. There's tons of master classes and things. And StoryPath, because it's $1,000 course, does get dripped out, but you get the first couple modules of StoryPath, and then every week more of that is dripped out for you. And it takes about 4.5 months to drip out that complete course. A lot of the writers who we have will come in and they'll stay 3, 4, 5, 6 months. That's a really nice chunk of time. I also have people in the club who have literally been there since we opened it in 2020 and have been with us the entire time. There's no wrong answer. I just want you to get in there and see what's available and if it's a good fit. So the club also can save you tons of money if you look at it and if this applies to you for each of these bullets. If you're going to hire a developmental editor, you might be doing it too soon. If you can go through the StoryPath course and do all of this work on your own structurally, it's going to be a lot less expensive to hire a developmental editor because you will be so much more solid in where your story is, and you can hire them strategically and for, less time and money. You will save the time and the mindset drama of not being able to finish and move forward. I mean, if I had $1 for every writer who told me there were months or years where they had been stalled out, either over writing or marketing, right? That would be incredible. You can save on multiple expensive courses, right? A lot of us love learning. And so we've got a course over here, a course over here, a course over here. We're giving you writing and marketing resources all in one place. So you'll save on having to buy a bunch of different resources. If you decide to do one-to-one coaching, you get 20% off for members. And often we will run discounts only to members that we don't run to our full email list that are in the range of 30%. Also, hiring PR, right? I can teach you a lot of great marketing tricks and outreach tricks that will prevent you from having to hire your own PR firm, which often is not as effective as authors hope it will be, okay? So I'm going to put the link in again and the coupon code there. Remember, the coupon code is only good for today, my birthday, but you're welcome to come in anytime for that $179 price, which is still a screaming deal to come in and check it out. Binge all the content that you can, and then leave whenever you're ready to leave. You can cancel absolutely anytime. I'm going to skip a couple testimonials. Again, those are on the page because I want to make sure we get to some questions. So let's stop the share. And I'm going to jump to the Q&A box. And let me check when my next client call is here to see if we can go a few minutes over. Bear with me for 1 second. Okay, next call's at 1:30, so we can go a little bit over. Julie says, how to start marketing when you are unpublished and you haven't finished your book yet. Julie, thank you. I get this. This is a really important question to answer because I get it every single time I do a webinar. So when you are unpublished and you haven't finished your book yet, this is a very ripe and opportune time to start building your audience now. So don't let your brain tell you that it cannot be done. What we want to do is figure out, okay, let me back up a little bit. When you know you can start marketing, I'm not saying you have to, but when you know you can is when you know exactly what kind of story you're telling and exactly the kind of ideal reader who would love it, right? As soon as you know the kind of reader who would love to get their hands on this book, then you're like, yeah, I could start building this audience right now. If you're in the super early developmental stages of writing your book and you don't know how it's going to end up yet, right? You don't know if it's going to be mystery or action, then it's probably a little too early. We want to wait till we're pretty solid that we know what the book is what we're aiming for. The way that you do that is you figure out who is the ideal reader, and then you start working the connection system. Who are the influencers who already have an audience like that? What content can I give them that's going to be valuable to them? So I'm going to give you a nonfiction example, but fiction writers, this is possible for fiction too. So put your brain to work on figuring this out because I want to get to other questions. A perfect example is James Clear. So he wrote the book Atomic Habits, which has sold over 3 million copies. It's probably 4 million by this time. Insanely successful book. He started building an audience before he even ever had a book deal, before he ever even started writing the book. He was writing online about habits. So he knew the kind of audience that he wanted to reach. He was putting out content about habits, and he developed an email list of people. He got up to 100,000 subscribers on his email list. And guess what? When you have 100,000 subscribers on your email list, it's pretty darn easy to get an agent and a book deal, right? So that helped him get that deal in the first place. And then as he was writing the book, he was still building that audience. And when the book released, he was able to get on the bestseller list. I don't know if it was like immediate or if it took a little bit of time. I'd have to go back and look it up. But his audience building that he did before the book was even written paid off hugely for him, right? So you want to figure out who's my ideal reader, how can I start serving them now? And this can be done with fiction authors just as well as it can be done for nonfiction. And then you start doing that. So the first step is really to learn who that ideal reader is. Inside the Happily Ever Author Club, which Julie, I know you're a member, you can go and see another webinar that I did about developing your ideal reader persona. So that will give you kind of your next step of figuring that piece out. Who's my ideal reader? Okay, great. Now I can go do research, figure out who the influencers are, what my content's going to be. Great question. Let's see. Anne says, my books are on Amazon at a high price. How do you market at a lower price? A campaign to offer books at a reduced rate would help. So it might, that can be part of it. Pricing's part of the product side of it, right? It's not necessarily sort of part of the marketing side. So marketing, no matter what the price of your book, relies on how do you talk about your book to a new group of people so they have enough information to decide if it's a good fit for them. So the price point, the marketing language doesn't necessarily change based on the price point unless you know your ideal reader only buys books that are 99 cents, right? And you might build an ideal reader, or if you're in KU, right? The price point comes into play in your marketing only if you're specifically trying to pull out people who are bargain shoppers for books, and that's perfectly fine. So it can feel like, yeah, lowering the book can help. And certainly little, offers and price bumps can help. There also, if you do decide to lower the price of your book, you can use sites like FreeBooksy, BookBub, if you can get a BookBub deal, Fussy Librarian. There are a bunch of book promo sites where if you're running a discount on your book, they'll advertise that for you. So that can be a good way to get sales too. Viva says, does the sign-up incentive change over time or stays the same? For example, if my incentive is chapter 1 of book 1, but they sign up after they read book 1, how would I handle that? Also, can you give examples of a sequence content and timing of the sequence? I struggle with the content of the sequence. Yes, and Viva, I know you're in the club too, so we have templates and examples of email sequences inside the club. I don't typically, and I don't know if you were just using an example, Viva, or if that's what yours really is, but at this point, I don't recommend that just a single chapter of a book is your reader incentive, because it's been done so many times. It's usually not that appealing for people anymore. Sometimes we have to freshen these things up. So, and again, your point is like, if they've already read book 1, it's not very incentivizing to give them the first chapter of book 1. So maybe it's deleted material. Maybe it is a prequel. Maybe it's a short story. It's something that's going to be a standalone experience, right? I want to be super generous in building that relationship and give somebody a complete experience of what it's like to read a piece of writing by me, right? So if we give them a short story or a deleted scene, or, change a deleted scene into a short story, that is often more compelling than offering just a first chapter. Let me make sure I got everything in that question. Does it change over time? It might. Oftentimes, first of all, a lot of people will say, hey, I've got a reader incentive, but it's not working because I'm not getting any new signups. We don't know that it's not working unless you're actually pushing a ton of people to the incentive through outreach, right? So a reader magnet, it's called. Remember, a magnet needs to be in proximity to something before it can pull it in. So sometimes people want to throw their reader magnets overboard because they think they're magically going to bring in all these people from far and wide. You got to do the outreach, send people to the reader magnet, and then look at the number of conversions, right? The number of people who were exposed to the reader magnet and signed up for it. If that's really low, then you need a new reader magnet. Often reader magnets can perform really well over time. So if it's working for you, don't change it. There's no reason to change it for the sake of change. I would only change it if it stops working, or if you pivot in the type of book that you're writing. So now you need to attract a different type of reader. Let's see. Well, we're going to go like 2 more minutes. So I'm not getting to all the questions here. Susan says, why do you want to research who has already built an audience with your ideal reader? How does that help you market your book? Okay, good. I'm glad you're asking this very important clarifying question, because you are going to then ask that influencer to please, can I come in front of your audience and invite them over to my audience, right? But you're not going to say it like that. You're going to be like, hey, I'd love to come on your podcast and entertain your audience with XYZ. Here are what I would talk about, right? You need to make it a win-win for that influencer. But you want to get in front of audiences that are full of your ideal readers. So the way to do that is through that influencer. You have to build that relationship, or you can do it with cold pitches too. You absolutely can. But you're going to make it a win-win scenario where I'm using just a podcast as one example. There are lots of scenarios where you're like, hey, I'd love to come on the podcast. I've got a super entertaining story for people who love, mysteries, or who love, baking, or who love hiking, or whatever it is. And then you're going to invite that person's audience back over to your audience with your sign-up incentive. So great clarification question. What about mass mailings to lists? Is it worth the ROI? So I don't like the pay-to-play mass mailing to somebody else's list. That's in real sketchy territory for me. So you can, of course, do other author cross-pollination, right? So if you find another author who's really aligned and you guys want to each promote to each other's email lists, that's perfectly appropriate. But buying a list from somebody else is often in sketchy territory and probably doesn't work very well because it's probably not a super aligned audience. But we'd have to know the details, Al. I don't want to make too blanket a statement there. Steven says, I've lurked, followed, read your blog posts, and attended your webinars a long time. Your work ethic is astonishing. Please tell me how much time in your day do you spend on your book writing? So my personal book writing, I have a 1 sentence a day minimum, but that's just to get my flywheel going. So unless something's going really sideways, I'm writing more than 1 sentence a day. It's usually between 45 minutes and an hour. And I do that before my Pages and Platforms workday starts. So before my kids wake up, I'm doing my writing, and I'm going to be writing self-help books for writers until I die, I'm pretty sure. So I will write those in the morning before I wake up, and then I will do my workday while my kids are at school. And actually inside the club, we just got done covering a bunch of time management and productivity strategies without being a freak and burning out. Right? Like I have a good work ethic, but I'm able to do that over a long period of time because I also build in free time, family time, creative time, right? So if you're interested about that, Stephen, you could come into the club and watch all of those replays of when I covered all that material as well. Let's see. Phyllis says, 2-part question. I have a small number of subscribers. This will probably be the last one. I have a small number of subscribers in my MailerLite email list. I also have a Substack account. I haven't posted anything there yet, but I love the platform and have a bunch of followers. I've also been blogging on Medium for 2 years and have subscribers who signed up to get an email every time I post. How do I make these work together? Okay, so you can literally, if Substack is your favorite, and I have thoughts about Substack, but I won't share them now. If Substack is your favorite, you can download the CSV file of your MailerLite audience and you can migrate that to Substack. Those people don't care what platform you're on or what you're using on the back end. They signed up to get emails from you. So it's perfectly legal and relevant to download them from MailerLite and put them on Substack, and then you can just keep using Substack. Medium is a little trickier, and I'm not super familiar with if you can actually download your followers. I don't think you can, but my information might be outdated. So what I would do on Medium is put in a call to action at the end of all your articles for people to come on over and join your Substack, right? And slowly accrue the people, get them away from Medium and onto Substack. Your second part of your question is, I'm writing a memoir. What kind of content goes into my newsletter, and how does that content relate to a blog post? So your blog post and your newsletter can be the same. You're just posting them in 2 places to maximize the number of eyeballs. And I would also put it on Medium in your case, if you're going to keep using Medium. The kind of content, this is where knowing your ideal reader is super essential, because I can't tell all of you the same answer for what type of content should be in my newsletter. It depends on your ideal reader and what they would love. So having that detailed description of what your ideal reader is all about can help you make those kinds of content decisions. And I pick a real, flesh that person out as if you were going to put them into a novel. Make it very, very crystal clear. And then if I were going to lunch with this person, what cool things would I want to tell them, right? You can play a lot with that. And again, inside the club, I've got more information on reader personas, and it'll really help you out. So I got to almost all the questions. Thank you to those who hung in there until the very end. And I'm going to put the link in one more time for the club. You're welcome in any time, but if you want to try that first month for $48 off, it's my birthday, so you can do that for today. And thank you for all the birthday wishes. And I wish you all the absolute best of luck and most success with all your writing. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.